Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started here in a minute if you want to find your seats. As everyone's finding their seats, my name is Cameron Ryba. I'm the superintendent here at Strongsville City Schools, and I'm thrilled to see so many of our community members, our city officials, and members of our school staff here this evening to share in one of our community conversations. So we'll introduce some of our guests here in a minute, but first of all, I would like to thank some of our distinguished guests that are here. Mayor Persiak, he's already standing up, so welcome, Mayor. Thank you for being here this evening. If everybody give him a round of applause, welcome the Mayor. We have three of our board members that I saw walking in. We have President Carl Naso, thank you, Carl, for being here. Vice President Colonel Duke Evans, Board Member Jane Ludwig, and Board Member Ms. Richard Micko. Is Richard here? There you go, behind the camera, I didn't see you. Thanks for being here, and also we have a variety of our city officials, our city council members, so we appreciate them being here with us tonight, as I think it shows a true partnership of what we have between the school district and the city and the community. So we are going to start with our community conversation here in a minute, and I just wanted to let you know, as we talk about a team effort, this came from a survey that we gave out to our community in the month of January. So we sent a survey out to our community. We said, what are some topics that you want me to talk about as superintendent at our State of the Schools address? And one of the popular ones that came up was school safety. So we put that on the list and said, you know, throughout the months of March, or February, March, April, or May, we're going to talk about this topic. And this was before the tragedy that we had in Florida and the tragedy that we had around DC today and what happened in Jackson Township. We sent out another survey and said, of those topics, of that safety topic, what do you want us to address today? So we hope that our presentation today addresses those topics that you want to hear about as parents, as staff, as community members, with what we're doing in collaboration with the city and the police department in terms of school safety. So what we're going to do in our presentation today is we're going to look at a few things. We're going to talk about what do we do as a school district to ensure that we are alleviating with all possibility within our power, alleviating threats or danger from entering our buildings. Then what we're going to talk about is, should there be the chance that a threat or danger comes into our buildings, what do we do to mitigate harm in those circumstances? We're going to talk about what we've learned, what we've discussed, what are the next steps in our safety planning, and then just some miscellaneous safety-related questions that came up through the survey. What we're also going to do is I'm not just going to sit up here and talk with you. We have a couple of distinguished guests with us here today to talk about our safety plan, and I'd like to welcome and introduce Strongsville Police Department Chief Mark Fender, who's also with us here tonight, so please welcome Mark. In addition to Chief Fender, we have Director of Safety, former Chief of Police in Strongsville, and Director of Safety, Charles Goss, who's also with us here tonight. And so what we're going to do, we have about a 20 or so minute presentation that we're going to want to share with you on the topics that were submitted on school safety. After that, you're going to have the opportunity to submit questions to us that you would like us to answer that may have not been answered in the presentation. So you will see we have Jenny Pelko, our Assistant Superintendent, Dan Faust, our Communications Coordinator, George Anagnostou, our Treasurer in the back. They have note cards. So Jenny, Dan, and George, if you wave your hand so folks know who you are. They have note cards. So if you would like a note card to write down a question, please raise your hand anytime throughout the presentation. They will bring you a note card. They will bring you a pen. You will write that down at the end of our formal presentation. Excuse me. We will have an opportunity to answer those questions. And we'd ask you to think about what's a good question for the group. If it's a specific question, Safety Director Goss, Chief Fender, and I will be here afterwards to answer any questions that you may have. So hold up your hand if you need a note card. We'll get those to you, and we'll answer all of your questions throughout the presentation tonight. So what we're going to talk a lot about today is the what and the how. What do we do to ensure a safe environment for our students and for our staff and for our community? How are we doing that? What are the procedures we're putting into place? But what we talk about in a school district all the time is the why. Why are we doing this? And it's for those faces behind me. One of my most important jobs as a school superintendent is to make sure that the almost 6,000 people that are in my care each and every day, from students to staff to parent visitors, go home safe. And with something we take very seriously, and this is the why that drives us every day to make sure we're doing everything that is physically and possible to provide a safe environment for our students and our staff and our community members. So let's talk about what we're doing as a school district to make sure that we reduce the risk of harm getting into our building. So first of all, just want to give you a few updates on safety procedures or safety protocols we have in place. If you look across our district, almost all of our buildings have comprehensive video surveillance, both inside and outside of the building. So that video surveillance system is monitored in the building. We could monitor that as a district level and make sure that we're able to see all aspects of the property, whether it's during the day or the evening. And so that's important. It's important for safety during the day. If there's any issues that are going in our buildings, we can look what's going on in our buildings. It's also an opportunity where we are beginning to collaborate with the police so they can have access to that video footage as well. So that's something that's important to us in terms of video surveillance for our district. The other part that we take a look at is how do we ensure and how do we make sure that the visitors coming into our building are visitors that need to be in our building. How do we secure our entrances, right? So as soon as the student day starts, all of our doors are locked. And for the main entrances in our buildings, the first thing all of our doors have is they have magnetic locks. We've tested them to make sure how, a significant amount of pressure, it still will not open those magnetic locks. We also sure that to get access into our building, that we have trained staff, whether they're substitutes in the office or whether our office personnel, to ask specific questions to allow people into our buildings. So when you come to one of our buildings, if you're a parent or not a parent, you buzz in, the secretary or office person will ask you, what is your name, what is your purpose here, what's your child here, to make sure you have a purpose for being in our building, and then they will buzz you in to the office. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what happens to that, but we're able to see. We have video surveillance of the doors. We have a PA system where we can talk to make sure the folks getting into our buildings have a specific purpose. The other thing, and this is directly from the chief's leadership in this area, we have Strongsville Police Department personnel in our buildings almost on a daily basis now. And so one of the things the chief and I talked about when he became chief, he said, I have a vision of making sure that our officers in the area are in your buildings almost on a weekly basis. We touched base a few months ago, gave a status check of where that was, and as I go throughout the buildings, I hear time and time again, we love seeing Strongsville Police Department officers in our buildings on a daily basis. Our kids feel comfortable with the officers around, our staff feels comfortable, and I just commend Chief Fender and all of the men and women that come to our buildings, so they're there on a daily basis. They get comfortable with our schools and with our students. The other thing that we have, and you may have seen them at the middle school level and at the high school level, we have bollards, the big spheres that are out in the front of our building, whether it be poles or spheres, but just to make sure that we have limited access for vehicles that get close to our building. And so we've put those in through the renovation and construction project at the middle school and high school. So we talked a little bit about the visitor management system, and a few years ago, Chief Fender and I sat down and talked about, besides, asking the questions, what's your purpose here? What's another way we can heighten our security of letting our visitors in? And we, based on the recommendation of the police department, we adopted and purchased a software system called Raptor. So what that means is when you come into our buildings, not only do you tell us your purpose for being there, but you also have to give us your driver's license. When you give us your driver's license, that driver's license is scanned, as maybe a little small from where you're seeing, but what you could see is it scans through a handful of databases, specifically looking at whether or not you should be in schools. As it talks about, it has a sexual predator registry that it goes against, and it gives us a quick idea of, is this person permitted to be in the school district or not. The other part that it is heightened for us is that it prints out a customized badge for the visitor. So it used to be you would come to our schools, we would give you a generic badge that said visitor, and you go on about where you're going. But the badges now print out your picture on it. It says the building, it says the date, it says the time, it says your intended purpose. So it helps us as a school staff, as I talked about, we have over 700 plus staff plus subs on a daily basis. I can look in the hallway, and if I don't recognize you as a staff member and you don't have an ID badge on that says your purpose, I know my job as an adult is to intervene, to ask you your purpose here and take you back to the office so that you could be properly identified and given a badge. So it's a quick identification for us in the office. It's really enhanced our security, and that's been in place, I believe, for about 2 years now in the district. The other thing that we're asked is, how do we help out? And we get a lot of questions about how do you know which students are at risk, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, or staff that may have concerns about students. And we talk a lot about with our faculty and with our students about if you see something, say something, and tell somebody. We need to know what's going on, what you're hearing from other kids, or what you're hearing in the classroom. And some of you may feel comfortable telling your parent, and your parent calls us. You may feel comfortable about picking up the phone and calling a guidance counselor or a teacher or me, but some of you may not. And so what we've put about 2 years ago, this is on the corner, the side of every one of our websites, it's the Stay Safe Speak Up hotline. So you have two options. You click on that button, it gives you directions if you want to call and talk to somebody. So it'll give you a 1-800 number. If you want to make a report, you could call the number and do that. In the years we've had it, I've never had anybody call. But what they do use is the online option. You can also click on it and make an online report that has your name, email, phone number, address, all of that stuff, or you can make an anonymous report. The name is optional. And the beauty of this system is that it's instantaneous communication with us. So if I'm a student or adult, if I've had both students and adults go through this process, and I give a report, it comes to me as superintendent, it comes to Jenny Pelko as assistant superintendent, and it comes to Andy Trujillo, our director of student services. It also comes to all of the administrators at the building level. Now, if it's a non-emergency threat, it'll go in the email, and you'll have the opportunity to investigate the next day or when you see it. But what's powerful about this system is if it is an emergency, if it is deemed as a threat, these are monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They call you until they get a hold of you. They will call my phone at the same time they call Jenny's phone, at the same time they call Andy's phone. And they won't stop calling until somebody picks up. And they say, read your email. There's something that we want you to be aware of right away. So I've gotten these calls on Saturday afternoons. I've got them at 10 o'clock at night. I've gotten them all during times of the week and days of the week. So this is a great resource that we promoted. Dan has promoted in our communications. We ask that you promote to your children or you use that if you see something, know something, we want you to say something. We're all in this together to make sure that our schools and our students and our staff are safe. The other thing that we've done for our buildings to ensure security is we have shatter-resistant film on doors and windows in some of our facilities. So you may have seen this in the news, a variety of places, but if somebody would do something to one of our doors or windows and you would see the glass just fall out, that is not the case for all of our facilities. So we do have protective film in some of our facilities in the district. We also have worked with our school staff, especially since some of the recent tragedies, of making sure we're limiting access to the building, especially during large arrival dismissal times for students, where large amounts of people are leaving and entering the building, to limit the access of where students are exiting and where students are entering. So that's not a perfect system yet. We're still working. It's easier at the elementary buildings, the preschool, but larger buildings like the middle school and the high school, we're still working on plans as to how we are limiting access to the building. And speaking of the high school, when we talk about the high school, we have almost 40 exterior doors. That's a lot of doors. And so what we've talked with our students about is we need you as partners. We need you to help us make sure our buildings are safe. Chief Fender always talks about this is our house, right? This is our house and we need to protect our house. And we need our students and our staff and all the folks that come in our house to make sure they're part of the solution. So we've talked with them. We've clearly marked doors. We're making signage for our high school doors to say, used in an emergency exit only. We don't want you leaving or coming in this door. We've talked to our students. We'll meet Officer Koenig in a little bit here, but we've had meetings with our students talking to them about we're not propping doors open for our buddies. We're not seeing a friend or an adult outside of the door and saying, hey, you don't need to go around, just come in this side door. Because you don't know who that person is, or even if you do, we don't know if they're coming in to be safe in our schools or not. So we need to all work together, and our kids need to be a part of the solution. And so those are some of the things that we're working on to make sure that our schools stay safe and we alleviate the risk of harm coming into our buildings. Chief or Director Goss, anything you'd like to add to that?
I have nothing.
All right, so let's keep on going on about should the unfortunate happen and there's a threat, there's harm that enters into our buildings, what are our procedures and protocols as a school district? So these 6 bullet points, I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth in some of the slides. And we want to talk about, to let you know, we have state-approved safety plans for every single facility in our district, as well as the district as a whole. We're going to talk about the safety drills and what that means for school districts and how the police are involved in those safety drills, as well as the training of our staff. We're going to talk about the school resource officers that we have at the high school and officially on Monday starting at the middle school, which we're thrilled about. And we're also going to talk about the communication structures that we have with the police department in case of an emergency in one of our schools. So let's talk about our safety plan. Based on the Ohio Department of Education, they kind of make the rules for school districts. We have safety plans, as I said, for every one of our school facilities across the district, as well as our district as a whole. So that means that online for all of us to use, as well as the state to review and make sure that we're compliant, it has our site plans, it has our floor plans, it has our emergency management plan, and it has a list of contacts. And this is the part that I think is important that may not be widely known. I'm an expert, I think I'm an expert, or close to an expert, on educating children. These folks are experts on making sure our city and our community and our schools are safe. And I couldn't do this without them. So what we do is ensure we're using the people that have the expertise to help guide the process, and that's why when we send our safety plan down to the state, before we even do, the chief of police signs off and approves it. The fire chief, Chief Drave, signs off and approves it. EMS signs off and approves it. The county signs off and approves it. We have a parent, teacher, staff, administrator. All of these folks read our plans, give their blessings to the plans to make sure that we're doing everything that's possible. And these are reviewed on an annual basis with the Ohio Department of Education, and all of our plans are up to date and approved. So what does this mean in terms of how we practice the drills that we run? And what I have up here behind me are the laws that dictate school drills in the state of Ohio. So the first one is rapid dismissal. When we went to school, they were called fire drills. But what they're saying now is rapid dismissal is a drill that we have to do 6 times a year at minimum, and it's about any threat. It could be about fire. It could be about a threat of harm of somebody in the building that's at risk of causing danger. How do we get out of the building as quickly as possible? And so those drills we're required to do, if there's a sudden emergency, whatever that emergency is, how do we exit the building as quickly as possible? And we do that 6 times a year. The second drill that we do 3 times a year is called the school safety drill. So this may have been in years past called a lockdown drill, and we specifically, the name has been changed because, as Chief Fender is going to talk about, it's not all about just locking down anymore. But school safety drills, as you can read there, is if there is a threat of violence, of terrorism, or somebody is possessing a deadly weapon, these are what we practice, and this is what we're seeing in the news, and this is unfortunately what's happening across our country. What do we do when a true threat enters our building? And one of the things we got from the survey feedback when we asked the question was, some of our parents were unsure about what we actually do. So that's what we're hoping to do tonight, is clear up what we actually do. And so we have to have these drills 3 times a year, and if you have kids in our district, your building principal typically will send an email afterwards saying, hey, we had a school safety drill today, and here's what happened. The police are involved in, I think, every school safety drill that we do in the district. And I'm going to let Chief talk about in a minute what those look like. But the other part that's important is that, as it says up there, at least one safety drill shall be conducted where kids have to be secured in the building. So you just can't say, okay, it's a school safety drill, everybody, you're going to evacuate. We have to practice what would it be if we had to be in the building and locked down in the building. And then the other thing we have to do, in addition to the 6 rapid drills, the 3 safety drills, is we have to do a theoretical safety drill. So that's in collaboration with the police. It could be a tabletop discussion. It could be a part of our training that we do. But to talk about different safety scenarios and how are we going to react, what would we do, how would we handle this scenario. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Fender, who's going to talk about what training looks like from the police department to the staff and their involvement in our school safety drills and preparedness. Chief?
Great, thank you very much, Cameron. You know, folks, it really has been a journey in my career to be where we're at today, and the support that we continue to get from the school system to be able to keep our kids safe in our community. I wholeheartedly back the things that we are doing here, and we do it in collaboration. None of this could have been done if it weren't for our safety director and mayor, who have always supported us 100% as we move forward with our plans. When we talk about the first bullet point, SPD training and school staff, one of the things that we do, and we did initially when we brought this program in, every teacher in the school system has been trained in a 3-hour course in response to active threats. After that, each year, we do a refresher for those same teachers. So we bring to light the current events that have taken place. So an example, the event that took place today in Maryland, this would be something that we would cover in a refresher. Also, any new hires, that includes even our bus drivers, attend the full 3-hour class. One of the things that we talked about just recently was doing a refresher for the 3-hour class, because we've had so many requests to say, hey, listen, I would just like to do the whole training over again, and we're going to go ahead and help facilitate that. Our involvement with the school safety drills is unique as well. Most schools will just submit a letter saying, we completed our drill, here's the date, but not in this school system. The way that we do the drills is the police department is invited to participate and assist in those specific drills. And I'll break down a little bit of what we do differently in those drills in a slide that's coming up. We have set the bar high. One of the things that we do in the drills is when we choose an option, and that's what we're really kind of forcing on our schools and our staff, is to say that when the shooting happens, it isn't going to be just this one particular thing. So in other words, initially when this training started, everybody thought, well, we all got to run. Well, what happens is you may be leaving a secure environment surrounded by brick and mortar to run out and run into the active threat. That had to change. So the way that we do the drills now is we have a stimulus that comes into the schools, and this is raising the bar. We're using an air horn, could be a whistle, or something that emulates a very loud clap or an explosion. As that threat moves through, simulated threat moves through the school, everybody now has to choose an option. So we're getting everyone to think on their feet. It's been very effective, and we're seeing such an improvement that the comments that I get, I don't do the drills directly anymore. But the guys that do it now will come back and say, man, I cannot believe how quickly the teachers can get the kids quiet, get into a locked facility, and they're in a safe area. One of the things that I really enjoy, and I remember doing this myself, is we would do a drill, go into whatever was chosen, If a door was locked, we would announce ourselves as the police, we're coming in, and what we would see is everything done correctly. So items piled up in front of the door, lights are off, we have a teacher or a staff member standing at a ready position with an improvised weapon to say, not today, not in my house. Ready to take off somebody's head that would come through there. This is all stuff that has taken us a while to accept, to say, folks, we're living in a different time. We have to change the way that we think, the way that we do our drills. We have to change the way that we have conversations with our own children nowadays. That's our responsibility as parents. And you have to do it in a way that's age and maturity level appropriate. So it's not a one-size-fits-all.
And so one of the things, you know, as Chief said, is we're giving folks options, right? We're letting them know, based on where the threat may be or where the scenario may be, you have options. And one of the things that happened in our middle school this week and is happening in coming weeks is they are actually talking over the PA system about where the threat is. You know, the threat right now is by by this team's, you know, learning center right now. So they need to make a decision as to what they're doing and where they're going and how they're going to react to that situation. Go on.
Yeah, actually, it's a good point, and I want to make sure that I emphasize this. This is how this thing is evolving. So now what we're doing in the schools is we're relocating the PA system and also camera monitoring equipment. So it's in a separate room, isolated, surrounded by brick and mortar, that now a person with an emergency radio, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, can give blow-by-blow information to the officers that are now in response, in addition to getting on the PA system. That's something new. That's something that now is evolving, and the school, the district, is making the changes to make that happen.
So the other thing we wanted, Charlie, go?
I was just going to add one quick comment about the drills, so that everyone knows we don't go into these schools and do these drills and then file the paperwork with the state and just leave. We very carefully observe exactly what happened during that drill. People take notes and records and even video of what happened, and then we carefully critique the drill so that we learn better for the next time. Hey, what did we do wrong here? How can we improve? How can we educate the staff a little bit, because we should have done this and instead we did that. And as the chief said, that's kind of led to the evolution of how we do our drills and do our training, because we learn from everyone that we do. And the other thing, just to emphasize, it's been said, but I really want to emphasize it for the parents that are here. A lot of times they might ask their student, well, what do you do what have you been told to do in the event of an emergency or a drill? And sometimes the answer might be unclear, which might lead you to believe that we're not really well prepared. But in reality, you know, what we teach and what we practice are options. You know, it really depends on the circumstances. These are dynamic events, whether it's a weather emergency, a gas leak, or an active threat. You have to respond to the circumstances as they're unfolding, and that really dictates what you do. So sometimes there isn't a clear-cut answer. We do A. If there's an emergency, really we do A, B, or C. We train on all three, we learn all three, and we let the circumstances dictate which of those three options that we do. And it's much the same. A lot of people will call the city sometimes and say, well, where's my evacuation point? I'm just wondering. They'll see something on TV where a community or a neighborhood had to evacuate. Well, where do I go if I have to evacuate? Well, there's no clear-cut answer. You know, we have the rec center has all generated power, potable water. We can have cots there. We can prepare meals there. But if that's in an area that's unsafe, that's not where you evacuate to. So all of these different incidents are dynamic, and we have to learn to be flexible in how we train to respond to them.
That's a great point. And one of the things that we learned in the unfortunate tragedy in Florida is, how do we react when a fire alarm is pulled? And so that's one of the things we've had conversations with our district team and our staff about is, you know, if you hear the fire alarm pulled, we need to think first. You know, we don't react, we just don't go in the hallway. We need to think, is this a drill that I know about? Let me cautiously look at Does it seem like there's smoke around? Does there seem like there's a fire? Does it seem like people are leaving in an emergency? We need to have training in all these different scenarios, as Charlie said, in A, B, C options of what it may be, and that's how our training evolves based on what we learn, unfortunately, through varied events that happen across our country. And so one of the other things that we're doing is, how do we make sure we have safety personnel within our district? And so Chief's going to talk a little bit about school resource officers.
Yeah, I'm excited to introduce these two guys. First, Chris Koenig, if you could step up, Chris. Chris has been in our high school now for a while. Yeah, Chris does a phenomenal job. I will say that Chris has set the bar for Mike. If you'd stand and introduce yourself. He is our new middle school resource officer. Now, these are not inexperienced men. These are veterans of the Strongsville Police Department who have proven themselves on the road. Specifically, Mike is a SWAT officer. What better person to have into a brand new school where we have now consolidated our middle schools to have one big school. So we're very happy to have both of these guys here that are going to be full-time inside our schools.
And so I do have to say, this picture of Chris up here, I didn't pick a picture of him giving one of our students a ticket for leaving the high school parking lot. This was actually a good ticket, right, for kids leaving with their seatbelts on and being good young drivers. So I did want to point that out. But we are thrilled to have both of these guys in our district, in our buildings on a daily basis, and truly partnering with us. The last piece Chief's going to talk about is something called a CIRA radio, which we think is unique to Strongsville and adds a great layer of safety protection for our buildings.
Yeah, this is one of the really the highlights of our efforts working in the schools. There was a grant window available, and this happened probably 4 or 5 years ago. We were able to participate, get the grant, and we ended up putting portable radios inside all our schools. This, for us, is the gold standard. This is one of those things where if an event took place, they have an immediate direct line to the Strongsville Police Department. Huge. Instead of using a cell phone, a 911 device that goes to a decentralized location called CCOM, CCOM would ask, well, what's your emergency? Once they hear it's Strongsville, they'd say, well, let me put you on hold. Now I'm going to transfer you over to Strongsville, and that line would be picked up by our operators. That costs us time, folks. We can't afford that. So what they have is a radio very similar to the radios that are on these officers' hips. As soon as they hit that emergency button on the top, it immediately opens their mic. They don't even got to key it. An alarm goes off inside our dispatch center that alerts them to something that's going on in the specific school. In addition to that, that radio communicates with all the other radios in the district. So if an event is taking place at the Strongsville High School, all the other schools now are forced to make an option, select an option. What are you going to do? And we've talked about this. It's just a matter of time. And I'm very fortunate to say we're in a very progressive city that we're looking at this saying we're not going to wait until this happens. We're going to respond accurately. That if something happens at Strongsville High School, we're going to take this school and put it into a lockdown. So we're taking all our resources, we're going 100% into that line of fire to go ahead and stop whatever is going on there. So that's the purpose of the CIRA radio. We do radio checks also every quarter by a mutual understanding. So we make sure the equipment is functional and people know how to use it. The entire staff is trained on it. And we go ahead and we repeat that training at least once a year to say, do you really know how to use this radio?
So as we look at the topic of school safety, obviously it's a topic that, you know, causes anxiety and keeps me up at night. But when we take a look at some of the things we just talked about, great response time for our police across the city and our school districts, police presence in our buildings on a daily basis, 2 outstanding SROs at our largest facilities across the district, and instantaneous communication, and the training that we're aware of how our police react should there be a threat. It could give us a sense of comfort in the relationship and the work that we've done moving forward. Charlie.
I was just going to add a comment about the radios. I think a lot of you know that we also dispatch. We have a central dispatcher, a regional dispatch, which is right across the street. We also dispatch for the communities of Berea, Olmsted Falls, and North Royalton. And when we heard about this grant, we took the opportunity to acquire radios for all their schools too. So thanks to the help of the IT and our police department, we put these kind of direct radios in all of those schools as well to form that communication link with our dispatch center. I'd like to also add a quick comment, again, for the parents that are here. You know, when we are trained in safety and security, we learn about circles of security and how to make a place safe, a premise safe. And a lot of those rules are universal. And really what we want to do, our goal is to stop a threat before it ever gets inside the door of a facility. That's the way to make a facility safe. Everything that happens if a threat gets inside, our plan B, C, D, and E, which we prepare for and we're ready for, but our goal is to prevent an incident from ever happening in the first place and stopping the threat before it gets in the door. And we talk a lot about our partnership between the city and the school, and it's been outstanding, and we're proud of that, and that's not happening everywhere. We're so happy it happens here in Strongsville. But there's a third component to that partnership that is really, really important, and that's the families in the school system and the community. Because without your help, it's very, very difficult to stop these threats at the door. So what I'm asking is, if you hear something from your child, your student, hey, I think this kid is really troubled. He's going through some really hard times. He's saying some really crazy things. We need to learn about that. We need to intervene in that. We work really hard to make sure that we mitigate that threat before it becomes a crisis. If your student says, you know what, I'm amazed at how, sloppy we're getting with access control. I see kids going in and out of these doors, propping them open for their friends. We could do a better job there. We all need to know about that because that's how we correct those problems. So we welcome you as our third partner, and I want everyone here to know how important of a partner you are, because it's only with your help that we're going to be able to stop events before they happen.
Well said. Thank you, Charlie. So we want to talk a little bit about what the next steps in our safety plan will be. So a couple things we've talked about, just highlight quickly. Increased scenario training and drills. So as Chief said, age appropriate. We're going to increase those scenario trainings. It's not just, hey, we're going into a safety drill, decide whether you're going to lock down or escape or whatever the aspect may be, but what are some scenarios through the sirens, through the gloves that make a loud noise. We want people, as Director Goss said, based on what option A, B, or C is best for that situation. The other thing that we've started, and Chris started at the high school a couple weeks ago, and Mike is starting on his first week on the job here this week, is increased training with our students. So the one thing that I received a lot of communication from our students after the Florida tragedy was, I would like more training to know what I do in situations. So Mark Smithberger, our high school principal, and Chris have been having lunch study hall meetings with all the kids. They started last month. They're going to continue on this month to talk about how do you handle various possible threats that are in the building. The grade levels are meeting this week at the middle school to talk about that. Our classroom teachers are doing that at the elementary level, as we can talk about increased review of those safety procedures. So whatever room you're in as a student and adult, you know exactly the procedures that you need. We talk a lot about with our adults of, you need to get this into muscle memory, because if there is a threat, the stress, the pressure, the anxiety, you need to know instinctually what to do, and how we do that is by practicing. We are investigating additional options. As we talked about, we have an SRO at the high school and middle school. We are talking with the Board of Education about what does it look like, what additional safety personnel do we feel is necessary to keep the other facilities in our district safe, and those are ongoing conversations, and we should have a resolution of some decisions here in the coming months. We're also looking across our district, as Chief Fender mentioned, one of the protocols now is in a lockdown situation, you barricade your door. You do various safety things to make sure you're as safe as possible in the area that you're in. As a district, we are researching different devices that are available for districts to use to add increased security in our interior rooms in our buildings. We're also working on construction plans at our elementary buildings to enhance safety and security. We renovated the high school a few years ago. The middle school obviously was built a couple years ago. We built that in collaboration with the police department and the fire department, city and the city officials, Ken's here, who was at a lot of meetings with us, sitting in those meetings to make sure we were building it with safety in mind. We're taking a look at what that looks like at the rest of our facilities and putting together construction plans to enhance that security across our district. One of the things that I've done as superintendent, I've visited all of our buildings because I wanted to hear from our staff. I wanted to hear from them on a daily basis, where do you see safety successes and where do you see safety challenges that we need to meet? Our police, when they're in the buildings, they help us out with safety audits, and the goal to make sure that we have safety procedures and safety checklists that meet the intricacies of each of our buildings on a daily basis. A couple other miscellaneous related questions that came through that we wanted to address for you this evening. And obviously this has been a popular one lately, is where does the district stand on arming staff? I want to be clear that although this has now become a very important public discussion, this is a discussion we've been having between the school district and the police and the board for many years. Correct, Chief? Yes. We've been having this discussion, and arming staff is something that's always been on the list. But up until this point, based on our discussions and based on what we collaboratively feel is in the best interest of the safety of our students, we don't see that as an option that we need to implement at this point in time. So we continue to have discussions. The chief and I have met with folks that provide training and for school personnel. We've taken a look at possibly participating in that training to look at what that may be, just to gain more information. But it's not something at this point in terms of our safety plan that we're looking to implement. We've got other things that we want to implement to enhance the safety of our school district and our school buildings. Chief, anything you'd like to add on that one?
Yeah, you know, it's always a struggle. And I will tell you that depending on the demographic in the school, there's an occasion where that would be supported. But right now, I believe that we have too many other tools in the toolbox that we can exhaust, and that's what we've talked about with the school. That until we reach the point where we've done all those things, the transition would be just risky at best. So the thing that you got to remember is that when a teacher carries a weapon, brings it into the school, that weapon is now available to whoever gets to it first. So if that teacher becomes overpowered, you've now got a weapon inside that school. Plus the insurmountable amount of training that goes along with it. I heard it earlier, and Cameron said he's the expert as well as the other teachers are teaching. We want them to continue to teach and focus on teaching. Let's let the guys that do the training and are trained to protect our children and have the heart and spirit to say, I'll do what it takes to stop that threat, do it. And that's what we're working on now.
Thank you. So the second thing is, what's the process we follow when we hear of a threat? We have a very clear procedure that we follow. If it happens during the school day, and it happens at the high school or middle school, Officer Chris or Officer Mike investigate. Chief Fender and I talked about a year and a half ago, and when he became chief, and said, no matter the threat, no matter how large or how small, police are going to be involved. So if it's during school hours, it's our SROs that fully investigate the threat. If it's outside of school hours, no matter what day, what time, my first call is to Chief Fender. And his first call is right to the supervisor to get somebody on it to see what's going on. So what happens is the police take care of their investigation. They make a home visit, they talk to the child, they talk to the parents, and ultimately they make a decision and give me feedback as the superintendent about what they think the level of threat is. And then what we do as a school district is we communicate with those parents and say, we understand that we have this threat, the police have investigated, but you or your child is not permitted back in our buildings until you meet with us, and we make sure, in addition to the police's assessment, that there's not a threat to our schools or to our kids. If we feel that there is a threat, then we have a code of conduct and we discipline according to that code of conduct. If there's not a threat, we document it and we communicate to make sure we're both on the same page. If there's a threat in our district, the procedures I do for communicating is I communicate that to the entire school staff. They know what's going on, what's happened, what the threat was, how we reacted, and what the police's determination was. I communicate with the parents when it's a threat that has happened for a building. I communicate with the parents in that building. So a few weeks ago, the high school parents got a call from me at about 10 o'clock at night to talk about, if you remember, the SHS threat that was going on across the state. And so that was an update to share with the parents. We've collaborated with the police. It's not a credible threat through our area, so everybody was kept in the loop. And that's how we communicate, that's how we collaborate, and what we do when we have a threat in one of our buildings. The social media piece is difficult, right? You think about, we've got, if you just look at our middle school and high school kids, you're looking at almost 4,000 students that are on a variety of social media platforms, whether it be Instagram, Snapchat, or whatever they're on. So this is where it goes to what Director Goss was talking about. We need everybody's help. We do monitor social media. We have staff that take a look to make sure what's being said and what's not, but obviously we can't monitor all of it. And you know where we get our best information from is the parents. Take a screenshot of whatever you saw that's concerning. Email it to me, email it to the principal. We address it and we investigate it from that point forward. So, you know, we always encourage, you should be checking your kids' social media accounts, knowing what they're saying, who they're saying it to. Have that relationship with your children where if they see something concerning, they show it to you. And that's how we handle it. We need your help to monitor that social media. In terms of at-risk students, yes, we know our students that are at risk for a variety of behaviors. We're working with our school psychologists with some training that they went to look at how do we support students that may have some propensity or some behaviors that may be concerning. And there's a question down here in a little bit about how do we address bullying, how do we provide supports to students. And so this is a complex topic, and I'm going to talk about it very briefly, but here's what we do as a school district. We provide comprehensive instruction from our guidance staff at the elementary middle school in terms of whole group lessons. We have a program that we use, and through the elementary and middle schools, we screen every student in specific grade levels, and we look at, are there any behavioral concerns, social emotional concerns, or academic concerns? And if there's social, emotional, or behavioral concerns, our guidance counselors help support that through the work of group counseling, and group counseling happens at the high school. 2 years ago, we collaborated with Nancy Laurie and Associates, a local counseling firm, to provide more intensive clinical-based counseling in the school system, because there's only so much our guidance counselors can do in their role of a school guidance counselor. So we provide comprehensive instruction to all of our kids in what it means to be a productive young man, young woman, citizen. We screen our kids at increment parts to make sure, are we catching the kids that we need to make sure that they're productive citizens. We provide group counseling, we provide individual counseling, we provide clinical counseling within the school district to make sure our kids are getting what they need. Issues of bullying happen. We're not averse to that in our school district. And if all of these proactive steps that we put in place are not working, again, we need your help to reach out to us. We can mediate, we can discipline, we can consequence, we could support, we could teach replacement skills for the poor skills that some of our students have. And that's a process that we need to collaboratively work on together. And so those are some of the things that we're doing to address not only the safety from our facilities, but the safety from making sure that we have students that care about one another, that are positive, and that are developing into the citizens and the young men and women that we hope they all do during their time with us in the school district. At this time, we're going to transition to answering some questions that you may have had. So if you have any note cards that haven't been collected as of yet, if you want to hold those up, Jenny, Dan, and George will be there to get those. And in this time, Chief or Director Goss, anything you'd like to say before we get to the questions?
Maybe one quick word, again, to the parents that are here. If we do have an unusual event, the natural inclination is going to be to rush to the school. I want to get reunited with my child as the students are maybe getting released early or whatever the circumstances call for. Please, please help the first responders that are trying to manage that event by following whatever instructions have been pushed your way, either through the school or through the media, because it really helps us to bring resolution to an issue when it's done in a more orderly way. And your participation to make it a little less chaotic is really helpful. I can tell you that there is absolutely, positively nothing more important to us than the safety and welfare of your children, the students in this city. Nothing. We would hold them in as high safety regard as our own children. So we're doing the very best we can to safeguard them. If there is an incident which draws you to the school to be reunited, please do it according to the instructions that are coming your way. It will really be appreciated by the first responders that are working to resolve the problem.
Thank you, Charlie. One question that was for me: are there any plans to provide elementary schools with door locking technology should somebody get in? There was a vague statement in there about looking at how we continue to secure the interior of our building. Yes, that is something that we're taking a look at. We've inventoried all of our interior doors across the school district. We've actually had conversations with the police as to various products. So that's something that I'm working with the board on and should have a decision here shortly. But that, in addition to some of the other safety procedures, that is something we're taking a look at as a district. Chief, this question's for you. What are the common potential safety threats in our city that could happen in our schools? How likely are they according to the data and information available to you in Strongsville?
Wow, there's a lot to be said. I don't know if I can answer that all in one session. As we're looking at events throughout the country, we're doing our best to learn from those and to prepare for it here. I believe that we've always managed to be one step ahead. Those are the areas that we're working on. One of the things, and I've said this constantly, and that's what really kind of made my decision in the middle school, was losing sleep over the safety and security of our kids, and especially as it related to the middle school. There was just too much overwhelming evidence when you look at national statistics and the amount of violence that is between the middle school and the high school. But we're not satisfied with just that. I actually had a good night's sleep last night, by the way. But we're not satisfied with just stopping there. So Cameron mentioned it, we're in conversation now to begin working on the other schools with some plans. It would be premature for me to talk about that right now until Cameron has established some of the finances that need to be put in place to do that.
Chief, we talked about this the other day when we met. Please address the safety of the new middle school. We have pods or learning communities, and some of those have garage doors. What are we doing with the garage doors at the middle school level in terms of safety?
Yeah, really good question. I understand the learning environment that everyone's trying to achieve. From a police and law enforcement perspective, it's a tactical nightmare. But the idea here, though, is we can still work with it. So one of the drills that was just completed, I want to say it was last week, Sergeant Colgrove participated and oversaw it. And what we're seeing is everybody is starting to understand the way that we want people to move. If they're in that common training area with the garage doors, the goal is to immediately move out of that room into the side rooms that are surrounded by brick and mortar. So right now, that is the plan that we're using. And actually, it's been done very successfully, I might add. He had noted that there was only a situation with one room that they had to have a discussion to say, we want to make sure that you're not in this room, but instead you move very quickly into these other side rooms. So we do have a plan, and actually, again, through repetition, training, that's what law enforcement does, and that's how we become better at what we're doing, and that is to work and practice, and that's what we're doing inside the school when we conduct the drills.
So we've got a few questions that I can help out with about just safety and security at some of our other buildings. So are we going to implement resource officers, the Sierra radio, and other security measures at the elementary school? So we do have the Sierra radio at all of our elementary schools. That's already in place. As we talk about school resource officers and security personnel in the district, those are conversations that we're having right now about what is the need for the elementary levels. So that's a conversation. Right now we have the middle school and high school. We're taking a look at what that means and what we need at the elementary schools, and some of the other security measures we've talked about. There is going to be, we're finalizing plans to increase security at our elementary schools, whether it be the access to the building and how people get in and secure entrances to those buildings, whether it be, I know there's a lot of questions I saw up here about filming the glass to make it shatterproof. So those are all things that are in the works, in the discussions about how do we protect the entrances to our elementary schools. So that's our first priority right now, is increasing the security of our main entrances to our elementary schools. And so a lot of those issues will be addressed, and hopefully as we get ready for the fall of 2018, we'll have a lot of those answers completed and things in place, but I'm not able to share specifically right now what that is because we're still working through the details of what we feel is in the best next order for our district in collaboration with the police, and also financially what's feasible, not just for next year, but feasible financially for the districts to sustain for years to come. I've made a pledge and believe strongly that when we make improvements, enhancements to our district, it's not just for the next few years. These are enhancements that we want to have as a part of our district for many years to come. All right, so this one for both Director Goss and Chief Fender. Back in 2014, there were at the high school a number of threats. We had a lot of bomb threats. We had a variety of threats, and yet to this person's knowledge, no person or persons were ever apprehended. There were cameras and police officers present then. What actual improvements have you made in security since that time? And do you believe today whether these some situations or scare tactics from individuals could still exist without apprehending anybody?
I'm not sure which event that we're referring to. I know that it is quite common. We're seeing it throughout the country. One of the things that's very difficult is now they got that cloaking or an app that is available on phone. So in other words, I can send a threat somewhere, but I can go ahead and put in somebody else's number. And that's been a big problem. But as technology improves, we've been able to trace some of those down. So in one event, we had an individual that made a threat from PA to the schools on a bomb. So we were able to trace it all the way back. We did make an arrest, and that was the end of it. The other ones, often we're able to get close enough to it, but some of them, quite frankly, are unresolved. But again, as technology improves, our success rate continues to increase. Charlie, I don't know if you have anything else on that thought. But that's kind of where we stand with the bomb threats. We handle them as though they're real. So when they come in, we immediately go to the schools and we make an assessment. We talk to whoever took the call, the operator, to find out what the legitimacy is of that threat, and then we kind of solicit the teachers that are there to assist us in saying, did you notice anything unusual as far as a package inside your work area? And then we go through the school. It's very tedious and time-consuming, but that's what we end up doing.
And I just want to clarify, as the chief said, you know, the bomb threat that I think this person's referring to, the person, as far as I know, is in jail right now. They were found, they did a variety of threats, and the person's in jail. But I also want folks to know that sometimes these folks are sophisticated. We think sometimes it's a high school kid that's making a threat, trying to be funny. You know, some of these, they're bouncing through a variety of IP addresses where you can't trace it. So it's not the typical a high school kid that picked up a phone and made a bomb threat and it's easy to trace. There's sophisticated ways they're making these calls that make it extremely difficult for police to track where these calls are coming from. Question about our students with disabilities. How do we help prepare our students that may have trouble following directions or keeping quiet? And how do we ensure their safety in an event of a threat? So we do work directly, as we look at our students with disabilities in the district. We have students that have very mild disabilities all the way to students that have very significant, or we call moderate to intensive disabilities. And we rely on our teachers, our intervention specialists that work with our students on a daily basis about how we can share what we need to do with them in a way that's meaningful to them. So it may be through a social story. So a social story is something, instead of me as an adult talking to you about, Bruce, here's what you do, and we have a threat, and you're going to do this, this, and this. It may be a social story where I have picture cues that share when this happens, when you hear the alarm, here's what we do, and they practice this. We've also sat down and talked with our teachers that some of our students that may have mobility issues where they're in wheelchairs or have physical disabilities where they couldn't evacuate in a timely manner, they have plans for how they are going to be secure within the classroom because of the physical limitations. It's just not possible for them to evacuate the building. So it really is individualized to the students. When at all possible, we prepare our students before drills. We talk to them, the teachers will talk to them, make sure they know what's going to happen, the type of sound that they're going to hear, what the procedures are. As we've said, nothing's a perfect science, but we do individualize our safety training for our students that may need more supports to know those procedures and know those steps because we want to make sure that they're safe as well. And Drew Kosmikis, one of our high school special education coordinators, is here, and so we have 3 coordinators across the district. If you have specific concerns for your child, for that classroom, Drew is here from the high school level. John, Henry, and Megan Surso, who take care of other buildings in the district, would also be happy to take your questions. Chief or Director Goss, any thoughts? What are your thoughts on metal detectors at the entrances? And then this is a popular question I've gotten, is how do we secure our buildings during non-school hours? We're a public school district. As you see, we've got basketball going on. Our schools are open all the time. What are some of your thoughts on metal detectors and securing our buildings outside of school hours?
Yeah, maybe I'll begin with the metal detectors. I think that we have some other options that we really do need to exhaust first. One of the things with a metal detector is anytime you install a metal detector, you still have to have an officer with it. So we use one at our court. If you've got somebody coming in with an intent to harm and they've got a weapon on them or in a package, as soon as they reach that detector, there's a chance that's where it's going to happen. So you have to have trained people at that particular place. I think just the increase in our visibility in what we're doing right now across all the schools is going to be one of the things that we're going to work very intentionally on. So we've got 2 of the biggest concerns addressed, which is our high school and our middle school. We'll continue to work with that with our officers. I hate to use the word never. Metal detectors, I think that there may be a time and place, but right now we have some options that are going to be more cost effective, including the options that we're talking about right now with the schools. I'm not sure, what was the second question, Cameron?
Metal detectors and not outside of school hours. So, our buildings are secure during the school day, at the evening, especially buildings like the middle school and high school. How do we keep from threats coming in after school hours?
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations with this. Again, it goes back to we want that open feeling, and Cameron and I have been very candid about it. On the police side, we are strong believers in access control. We want to limit as many areas as possible that anybody could have access to. So when you're talking about schools as large as this one or the high school, it would be the use of the gates. We need to partition off the areas that should not be accessible by anyone that's coming in for any kind of a sporting event. And quite frankly, and I heard the safety director say it already today, folks, we can't do this without you. You are the safety net. That when you go to a game, a function, your radar needs to be up, and you need to be looking for anything that's out of place. You see somebody that pushes a gate aside if it wasn't locked, somehow gains access to a part of a building they shouldn't be in, that's the time to bring it to somebody's attention. That's how we're going to resolve this. I think the thing we've lost is we have to recognize we all have skin in the game. You've heard it here said before, and Cameron mentioned it, it's this idea of this is my house. Think about your own home. If I came into your house and I made a decision to hurt you or a loved one, chances are you'd do something about it, wouldn't you? Well, folks, the reality is that wherever you go, we need to live differently. That when I enter this place, when I enter the borders of this community, I take ownership. This is my house. And we take it very personal. I think that's the basics that we have to come to that ultimately will lead to creating a very secure and safe city, community, and school.
So the last group of questions talk about, some of the statements we made there about almost all schools have security cameras. Some schools have filming on the windows, and asking for more specifics on that. So between now and fall of 18, August of 18, when our students come back, we feel that we're going to be able to enhance some aspects of our security in our buildings and across the district. So as we look at, cameras, we do have camera coverage in all of our buildings. The goal will be to address that in the coming months. Not only the buildings that have limited camera coverage or the building that has limited camera coverage, but also looking at across all of our buildings, where are there some spots where we need to increase video coverage. So that's something that we're working on right now with our operations manager. We've purchased additional cameras to fill in the gaps where we have some spots where we need better visibility within our facilities or our properties and inside the buildings, and working on ensuring we have an integrated system to see all the cameras across our district. And we've started to approve some of those purchases, and we'll be working to get that done in the coming months. In terms of the filming, of the doors, windows, as we look at, increasing the secure entryways for all of our elementary schools, that we are targeting that for this summer to get that done. And when you take a look at that, filming is a part of any project that we're doing. When we look at every single window in every single building that we have to look at what the cost of that is and when is the timeline. So when we took a look at, various safety plan and safety options, we have to look at what do we think in collaboration with the police and the city are our best, most cost-effective options right now to make a significant step forward in the security of our buildings. Securing those vestibules, looking at resource officers, looking at surveillance footage, looking at devices within the buildings to keep the classrooms, increase the security that they already have, are where we're putting our focus right now. As we look at moving forward, then we look at those additional options that will be there. The other question that was asked, just about our students, what are we saying to our students to make them feel safe? What we talk to the teachers all the time is, you need to speak to your kids. You know your kids better than I do. You need to talk to our kindergarten kids differently than we talk to an 18-year-old senior. But what we talk about is how we make sure we're safe. What do we do in case of a drill? How are we going to protect ourselves in language that's kid-friendly language? So if that's a question you have, it's best to ask your classroom teacher how they discuss it, because they're much more versed in how they do that than I am to share global examples. And Ms. Arrington from one of our Whitney Elementary School is here. And I know when I came over and talked to Whitney, those are things that they do. They talk about, should there be a threat, here's what we do. We've talked to our teachers, and when we go through our training, we talk about having something to possibly throw at an attacker, to distract. And classroom teachers talk about, in age-appropriate way, what's something that we can have to distract somebody, what's something we can do to protect from anybody coming into our classrooms, and that's the work that they're doing. The last question that we have, I believe, and then Director Goss, Chief Fender, and I will be up here to answer any individual questions you may have, what is about how do we let students know what's going on in the school. We send a voice shot out to our parents, but what about the kids? We do have the capability to send emails to our students, but we do not have the capability to call our students. And we rely on our parents. And we feel it's very important. When I send a voice shout out to all of the parents, that's going to our parents that have 3-year-old children that are in our district, all the way to parents that have 18-year-old children in our district. And as we talked about students with varying needs in our district, we feel that you are the messenger to share the content that you feel is best for your children. And we want to get you the information. We want to share with you the facts that we have, and then give you the parental discretion of what you're going to share. So there are not plans to communicate directly with our students when we communicate globally with a threat, but we do have plans, as we talked about at the middle school and the high school, to sit down and have real conversations with our students about what they can do to protect themselves, what they can do to remain safe, what they can do to help our school district remain safe. And those are the conversations and the training and the work that we're doing with our students throughout our training program during a school year. So with that, I think we've gotten a lot of the questions that were asked. Chief Fender or Director Goss, any final comments you'd like to share?
I just appreciate the interest that you folks are having. I think it's important that age and maturity level appropriate, And these are conversations now that need to be shared over the dinner table. This isn't a problem that is just in the schools. Folks, it's anywhere that you go, restaurants, go to the mall, shopping, it doesn't matter. We just have to live differently. So that's kind of my closing thought. And I'm applying everything that I'm telling you with my own family, my granddaughter. It's unfortunate that we have to talk about this, but folks, the reality is I'd prefer that she hears it from me, her grandpa, than from a teacher, or to have it confronted face to face and not have any idea on what to do. I think that's our responsibility.
I would just close by welcoming anyone that's here or anyone that you know to call us at the city. If you have a concern, you have a question, something's on your mind, send us an email, pick up the phone and call us directly. We will respond to every single one, I promise. So we're accessible, and we would love to hear from you. If you have concerns, get a hold of us.
I'd just like to say in closing, I think it speaks volumes when you look around who's in the room tonight. Not only a tremendous amount of parents and community members, but our mayor, our chief, our safety director, our council people, our board members. This is a topic that is all important to us. It's critical for the safety of our district, for the safety of our students and our community. And I appreciate you of coming tonight and starting the conversation with us. And we hope that this conversation is going to continue in the months and years to come to make sure that our kids are safe. I tell you, we can't guarantee anything, right? But I know that we're doing everything that we possibly can on a daily basis to make sure that our students and our schools are safe. And we appreciate you in partnering with us. And if you would like to continue to partner with us and to continue the conversation with us, we do have 2 additional community conversations that are happening, again, based on feedback we've got from parents. We'll be meeting at the High School Media Center in April to talk about how we prepare our students for life after Strongsville High School, whether that's college or career readiness. And then we'll take a look at what we've done and where we're going with the integration of technology into education in mid-May. So again, we'll be here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you for partnering with us, and have a wonderful evening.